You made it. We got a great day planned for you today, from start to finish. I hope you guys ate your Wheaties, because it's going to get good. We're gonna kick things off today with our friends over at DataXu. By the way, well, I said I wouldn't say anything, but Chris is going to tell you all about it. But there's a coffee cart outside that's doing good coffee, and it's very good. And that's brought to you by DataXu, and he'll tell you more about it. But I had one, and that's why I'm all fired up right now. So there you go. So to kick things off this morning, we have Chris LaHaye, Director of TV Solutions for DataXu. Chris is going to talk to you this morning about your questions about connected linear TV are going to be answered this morning right now. We've had DataXu involved in our shows and a lot of our events, our different events, for several years, and we're thrilled to have them now part of the TV Insider Summit. Please give a warm welcome from Mr. Chris LaHaye.
Morning. It says your questions about connected and linear TV answers, but it really should say my questions about connected and linear TV answered, because when I was thinking about this, knowing that I was going to get a chance to speak, and I'm usually out there. I think I might be too close to that microphone. I'm usually out there, and I like to always think, like, what would I want to hear if I was sitting there? And so that hopefully is what you'll see here, something that you actually want to learn about connected and linear TV. And I'm realizing I left my clicker over here, so I'm going to grab that. Connected and linear TV, the way that I like to think about it is it's just television, and I think we'll all be talking about it in that same sense soon, especially based on the conversations that we had here yesterday. It's all just going to be TV. But considering how different they are today in both the way they're transacted and consumed, still makes a lot of sense to think about them as different entities. And so that's really how we're going to talk about it and think about it. But even though they are separate, they really shouldn't be siloed. So the way that I've always liked to think about it is how can these two things work together? How are they different? But then also, how are they really similar? And that's basically the idea behind these slides that we have here for you. So the first thing that I always like to start with, and I can't take credit for any of this data, this is from ComScore and a report that they do every year from their connected home panel they call it the State of OTT. And these darker blue bars here represent households in the US that watch connected TV. And the lighter ones, those are my own projections based on their numbers, because the last time this came out was June 2018. So obviously some time has passed and there's been a lot of growth. But something that is important to note about this that makes it different than other stats you've seen before about who watches connected TV or how many people watch connected TV is that this is about viewership, and it's not about necessarily ownership. And it's not about devices, it's about households. So specifically, if you look at the last number that they've reported, the 59.5 million households, roughly about half of the US TV population, this represents households that have connected TV devices and then actually use them. So just because you have a PlayStation at home or a Samsung TV, you can use those to watch connected TV, but you might not. And so what this does is it strips away the excess that doesn't necessarily matter, because who cares if you have a internet-connected Blu-ray player, but you've never even heard of Hulu, for instance. But something else about this number that I've always wondered about, so that's, again, these are my questions answered, is that this doesn't specifically speak to ad-supported viewership. This is sort of like the rising of the tide lifting all ships. This is general viewership, people's adoption of connected TV. And it's important to know and get a feel for the fact that people are ready and used to watching this. But if somebody has a smart TV with a Netflix button on the remote and that's the only thing that they use, it doesn't really matter to those of us in the room quite as much. And now there aren't perfect numbers and data specifically for ad-supported, none that I've specifically seen. But that's what I do all day at DataXu, is I, fortunately for me, get to think about advanced TV at all times. I don't really do anything else at DataXu, and very quickly, more and more, that's the way it's turning at our company. So I wanted to take a look at what is the data that we have, specifically over the last year, that would give a little bit of a look at ad-supported connected TV. So the last slide shows growth in overall viewership. This slide is more about growth in adoption of advertising. So this takes a look at it from 3 different angles. The first one, and again, this is DataXu numbers, year-over-year growth, 2017 to 2018, the complete years. About 1,000% increase in available ad opportunities. So this is outside of the boundary of anything that we can control. This is what is made available to us, the ads that we could possibly be showing for our clients. And this really speaks to, in my opinion, the availability of connected TV advertising from the publishers. And something that's really important to consider when looking at these numbers also is not only is this just the view from one particular platform, but this is a wholly programmatic view. So what DataXu does as an ad platform is connects advertising of all forms, increasingly TV, in a programmatic manner. So when you take a look at these numbers and you think of 1,000% increase in available ad opportunities from 17 to 18, that's just a small piece of the pie. We don't really have any view at ABC or CBS All Access apps. This isn't going to necessarily consider anything that's directly sold by publishers or networks. This is just what we have a look at. And even those numbers, that small percentage is really, really massive growth over the past 2 years. About 1,300% increase in active campaigns. That number is great to see, but then it's the next number that really even shows it. About 20,000% increase in delivered impressions. So not only are more and more advertisers and campaigns coming online, but they're running way bigger campaigns than they did before. The way that I always like to describe it is 2016 was everyone trying to figure out what's connected TV. 2017, everybody ran their tests. But then in 2018, people are starting to scale these campaigns. And they're actually interested in running always-on TV campaigns on connected TVs the way that you'd expect in mobile and display and other forms of regular media. So when I was pulling these numbers very recently, I was even surprised to see this growth because we've seen numbers like this over the past 2 or 3 years. And they seem to be these really large astronomical numbers. And some of you might even be thinking, because I've thought that when I see these numbers, is did you go from 1 to 10? Did you go from 5 to 25? And that might have been true back in 2016, but we're consistently seeing these huge, huge growth numbers from a large base to then just even larger beyond that. So I then wanted to figure out who are these people that we're showing ads to, what makes them tick, how are they different from regular TV, in quotes, regular TV, linear TV, and how are they the same? So what we're looking at here is a heat map of where are these ad opportunities coming from? Where are people watching, connecting it out there, the ability for somebody to show them the ad? And what stands out most to me here is not differences at all, but it's similarities. So this is a heat map. Red means more, blue means less. And what stands out is this is what you could basically expect if you were to put a heat map up of Nielsen TV markets. No surprises, New York, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, Dallas. Those are where you're going to find the red. That's where you're going to see most of the ad opportunities. But what also really stood out to me about this is there's no white on this map. Some areas are blue because there's not as much, there's not as many people, but there's no zero. This is full coverage, totally national, 210 DMAs. Most of the national campaigns that we run show ads in New York and Glendive, Montana, and everywhere in between. And it really goes to show that this is not the archetype that we all like to assume that a connected TV viewer is. I'm guilty of this, and I know probably others are too as well. You put a pitch deck together for connected TV, you put a picture of somebody sitting in front of a screen, or probably they're in like an artisanal coffee shop in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and they're sitting there with like a long beard and a beanie, and it's like, this is your Finding Millennials. And the reality is yes, that's true, and it's over indexes, but it's everyone. You can find anybody in any part of the country, the coasts or really in the center. But where you live doesn't necessarily tell that full story. So then I started pushing even further. We have an advanced analytics team that works on campaigns to tell people who did you show your ads to. And I don't pay them to do this, and there's no clients paying them to do this, but I bug them enough so they start to give me this data. So this is a little bit of a look from like a full system-wide view of who are we able to show ads to? So this is not necessarily skewed to DataXu's customers and where we show our ads. It is the universe of ad opportunities that we see, but it goes beyond what we actually then buy and place. And again, like before, what stands out to me is not differences necessarily, but similarities to regular television. everybody knows that Generation Z coming up and millennials are connected TV viewers. But for instance, what really stood out to me in that age chart, if you were to add up 55, households 55 plus, that's 20% of the ad opportunities. If you add up 150K household income plus, that's 25%. And just the fact that there's a representative of, it is predominantly Caucasian, but there's representative of other ethnicities and a fairly even split male to female. So then we also wanted to take just a little bit further. This is general demographics, but what are some more interesting things that would still make sense for really any advertiser? And this is the type of stuff that we look at on a campaign, and we would normally go like way deeper for what are the things you care about. If you're Columbia Sportswear, you want to know, these people hike, do they fish, do they bike? But this is something that everybody could potentially care about. And again, what stands out to me is that there's no real like, oh, this is who watches connected TV. It's roughly split. Oh, you know, do you rent your home? Do you own? Are you single? Are you married? Do you have children? And there's some predominant traits, you know, renters. That makes sense because if we jump back, it's younger households, skews lower income. But again, there's people of all types. You look at the education. The largest group is actually other, which would be a combination of technical schools and like GED or high school equivalency. But then you have college graduates, high school graduates, and then even advanced degrees as well. And again, as I said before, it's not really about how are they different, it's about how are they the same, connected TV to linear TV. Because people like to think of it as yin and yang. And we know we need to be doing both of them at this point, but you kind of assume as long as I'm doing both, then that's great. And as long as I'm doing both, then I've got it all figured out. I've got my regular viewers and I've got my cord cutters. And they're mutually exclusive, so if I just buy both, then that's totally fine, right? Well, not the case. Now I'm going back to Comscore numbers here, so I can't take credit for this. And I think we actually talked about it a little bit yesterday, this idea of connected TV viewers, of being not full cord cutters. And sometimes I'll actually use this slide on a pitch to say, you have to buy connected TV because 34% of your audience is unreachable. They're cordless. The cord cutters, nevers, and then the unknown. But you can flip that on its head as well and say that 2/3 of the connected TV viewership is somebody you're going to reach, most likely, with a traditional plan. So if you just have both of them together, you're doing yourself a disservice with overfrequency, duplication, and then in some cases you might just be missing people entirely because obviously budgets are finite. You can't reach everyone at all times. So something that we've really started to consider a lot is the idea of the two of these working in tandem, but from like a much smarter perspective. Because if you wanted to make sure that you reduce your duplication, it would be really simple to go to a TV viewership data company, buy a segment of cable subscribers, and then just suppress all of that, anti-target the entire group. And then you say to yourself, okay, now I'm dealing with the 34% of the cord cutters. We're good, right? Now there's no more duplication. But again, budgets are finite. So do you really want to block all cable subscribers? Are you going to reach all cable subscribers? You're probably not. So what is important to us is the idea of knowing a little bit better what is the difference between these two and building a custom plan for every campaign and every engagement. And that's what this next slide takes a look at in the way that we consider it in what I consider to be the easiest sense, which is Venn diagram. And I'm going to build it out and be like super, hopefully simple for this, because it's actually a really easy concept. We basically just start with a strategic target. Who do you want to actually reach? Not just an age and gender, but well beyond that in the way that you'd expect from a digital company. And this would be agnostic to any type of media, just how many people exist in your target period. And then working with the client to ingest their media plan for what are you going to do in linear TV? Who are you expecting to find? And this is similar to the discussion that Jonathan presented on yesterday, where we'd be working with TV viewership companies with ACR data, like with, say, Inscape, to then connect it to our own proprietary household graph to then get an idea of if you're going to run your media at this times in these places, these are the households that you'll reach. But then also adding in what is that universe of ad-supported connected television, who could you potentially reach, to then find out where are these overlaps, like what is most important in these circles. And what's most important is this center area. Hopefully you can see the difference in the colors, but this is the section of people that you and your campaign want to suppress. And it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be smaller, it's going to be larger, depending on how much money you're spending in one versus the other. And are you trying to reach left-handed nurses, or are you trying to reach sports fans? Because those are very different groups of different sizes. But then you're left with your incremental reach. What can connected TV do to add to your traditional TV plan without being redundant? So you're not wasting any money, and so you're not hitting the same people over and over and over again. And the way that this gets used, you can think of it as like a product for creating incremental reach. And some people think of it that way. But that's actually not really how I even think about it, because in most cases, just reaching a household isn't necessarily what's most important. But this, for us anyway, is helpful for breaking down barriers to entry for anybody who's on the more traditional side of the TV space that feels like they need to be a part of connected TV, but they're not necessarily sure how to get started, and they don't want to look foolish and just be running the same things to the same people over and over again. So if you think about this as just knocking down barriers to entry, now you can just move on and run your normal performance-based campaigns, or completed views, or whatever else you want to run, with a sense of you have a safety blanket now, feeling like you're doing something that's a little bit smarter and a little bit more tactical for your own particular experience. So I have an example of how that actually worked. Now, in this case, the goal specifically was just incremental reach. We have a plan that we are running for a global auto manufacturer. We're going to do this no matter what. We want to see if we can get more reach, a higher percentage of our target for our client, and we want to use connected TV to do that. So the exact same process with those Venn diagrams: find the people you're going to reach, get rid of everybody that connected TV could then add that was duplicative, and then just target the people who are new. And it's funny because it's a case study, and there's numbers and there's words, but there's really nothing to it. We found the people that you were going to find anyway, and we just showed ads to the others. And the net result of that was about 900,000 additional households for this particular campaign. And this number that boosted the 21% reach. What you want to think about there, this is a lift comparison of, if I was going to run a traditional campaign alone, I'd reach X% of my audience. But I ran a traditional and linear campaign, and it had a 20% increase for Y households that I was actually able to reach in the target. And for this particular advertiser, that was a definite win. It really helped from our standpoint as proof of concept that this is something that is really important, really possible as well, because it's working on a lot of new technology. And bringing in the old and the new, and the linear viewership and connected TV viewership. So this really just stands as one specific example of how somebody could use it. But what we expect to see as the sort of the new way to move forward with connected television, in a world where the question yesterday of who owns it, if you own all or multiple, then this is kind of how you have to think about it. That's it for my specific slides. As promised, the explanation of the coffee. It's directly behind this wall, if you could imagine it, if you were to go around. And you all have a little card on your table. I don't know if you actually need it or not, but if you bring it over there, you can get a cold brew or an espresso. And totally free. That'll be there from 8 to 10. And I don't know how we're doing necessarily on time, but I'd love to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Hold on. Questions. All right. Chris, first of all, great job. Big round of applause for Chris. Awesome job. Just let us know who you are and where you're from.
Sonia Savati with Click Health. Just curious what the inventory looks like for different unit lengths, like 15s, 30s, 60s.
Generally speaking, you can find any type of inventory if you have a 15 or a 30. It becomes significantly limited if we're talking about 6-second inventory. 60s, there's still a really good amount. We don't find that there's necessarily, like, you're not losing out on titles or names if you're going beyond that. It can be a little bit trickier when you go 90 and 120 seconds. Generally, I'd say the average campaign that we run has some combination of 30s and 15s, but there is actually, believe it or not, hopefully everyone in this room knows this already, but there is scale for multiple creative types. A couple years ago, if you had a 60, there was basically like 2 or 3 places you could call, and that's not the case anymore.
Chris, Steve from MediaPost. Do we have any data about differences in impact between connected TV and traditional linear TV? Yesterday, we heard from Colleen at EA about how she's looking for those lean-in experiences, and she's looking for the situations where audiences are more and less receptive, so she can understand impact and to gauge investment across screens. Do we have any data that indicates differences in experience between various connected TV channels and traditional linear?
Yes and no. It's a very different process to measure the two because of the challenges that exist with linear TV. So it's really hard to have 2 numbers right next to each other that you actually attribute in the exact same manner to then compare them. What is nice about connected TV is the ability to link the viewership on that device to the other devices within your own personal bubble, to then say that you saw an ad on your living room screen and then you took an action on your phone. There is ways to do that with linear as well, and what I would say is that they are mostly similar. We see significant differences between what your attribution on a connected TV campaign would be versus a full episode player on a desktop or on a mobile phone. There really is a difference because of that living room kind of lean back or lean in, I guess, experience that you mentioned.
Well, what kind of match rate can you achieve now? What's a good match rate among audiences of OTT that can be then connected to their other online behavior?
So in our experience, the match rate is basically 1-to-1, and the reason for that is because people who use the DataZoo platform for connected TV are almost to a man or woman doing it specifically for addressability. Because the people that use DataZoo are targeting a specific audience, and they're, rather than finding the indices that do whatever, they're actually targeting every impression programmatically. And if we're able to target it, then that means we have the data to do the attribution. So it's not the same process you'd expect, like say with addressable TV, where you're sending exposure files and data files to a safe haven, and there will be a little bit of drop off in that process. If you're targeted and if you're shown an ad, in our experience anyway, we then have the ability to attribute to it.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? While we have Chris here? No. All right. Chris, you have a colleague that's here with you, 1 or 2, or is it just you? Yes.
Yes, there's actually a few of us here.
A few of you. Okay, so raise your hand if you're with Chris's team here. Okay.
Matt, Brennan, and Rich.
Excellent. And so if you have questions for these guys, grab them over the next, the rest of the day or tomorrow. And you have until 10 a.m. to get your coffee. So don't screw that up, because it's very good. I have to tell you, it's way better than the watered down version of coffee that they have outside. Sorry hotel, but it's pretty watered down. So go get yourself a nice coffee from DataZoo. All right, big round of applause for Chris. Thanks, Chris.